Picture two people, same debt load, same income, same monthly payment budget. Both of them are serious about getting out of debt. Both of them are making extra payments every single month. 5 years later, one of them is debt-free. The other still has 3 years to go and has paid $11,000 more in interest than the first person. Same income, same effort, same monthly number. The only thing that was different was the order they paid their debts in. Nobody told the second person the order mattered. Nobody told them there was a sequence that made mathematical sense and a sequence that quietly handed the bank an extra $11,000 over 5 years. Nobody showed them the difference, and the bank was certainly not going to bring it up. That is what today is about. The order, the math behind it, and the framework for figuring out the right sequence for your specific debt situation. Because the right answer is not the same for everyone, and I am going to show you exactly how to find yours. My name is Nick, and I find debt repayment strategy genuinely fascinating in the way that most people find it genuinely depressing, which probably tells you something about me. If you have more than one debt and you have never sat down with a clear sequence for eliminating them in the right order, subscribe and hit the like button, because today we are building that sequence step by step with actual math and a third method at the end that almost nobody talks about, but that for a specific debt situation mathematically beats both of the popular ones. Quick thing first, not a financial advisor, not financial advice, just math, behavioral data, and a framework you can apply to your own situation before this video is over. Let's start with where most people actually are, because the average American debt picture is clarifying and slightly uncomfortable. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent consumer finance data, the average American household carries about $6,500 in credit card debt, roughly $20,000 in auto loan debt, around $38,000 in student loan debt for households that have it, and for homeowners, a mortgage that averages somewhere north of $200,000. That is 4 separate creditors, 4 separate interest rates, 4 separate minimum payments, all running simultaneously. And here is the number that should genuinely bother you. If you carry a $6,500 credit card balance at the average current interest rate of about 21%, and you only make minimum payments, you will spend roughly 15 years paying it off and hand the bank approximately $9,400 in interest alone. On a $6,500 balance, you will pay more in interest than the original amount you borrowed. And that is just one card. Most people are running 3 or 4 of these simultaneously. The total interest cost of a minimum payment strategy across a typical American debt load is not a rounding error. It is a second car. It is a down payment. It is a decade of retirement contributions. It is real money that leaves your life permanently because nobody showed you the sequence. So let's talk about the sequence. There are 2 methods that personal finance people argue about constantly. They have been arguing about them for 20 years. The argument is almost entirely beside the point, and I will explain why. But you need to understand both of them first. Method 1, the debt avalanche. The avalanche is the mathematically optimal strategy. Here is how it works. You list every debt you have. You order them from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. You pay the minimum on every debt except the one at the top of the list, the highest rate debt. Every extra dollar you can find goes to that one. When it is gone, you take everything you were paying on it, the minimum plus the extra, and you roll it onto the next highest rate debt, and so on, down the list until everything is gone. The logic is airtight. High interest debt is the most expensive debt. Every dollar sitting in a high interest balance is compounding against you at the fastest rate. Killing the highest rate debt first minimizes the total interest you pay across your entire debt load. There is no mathematical argument against this. It is simply correct. Let me show you what correct looks like in dollars. Take a realistic 4-debt scenario. Credit card A, $5,000 balance, 21% interest rate, $100 minimum payment. Credit card B, $2,500 balance, 18% interest rate, $60 minimum payment. Car loan, $12,000 balance, 7% interest rate, $250 minimum payment. Student loan, $18,000 balance, 5% interest rate, $200 minimum payment. Total minimum payments, $610 per month. Let's say you have $800 a month for debt payments, $190 extra to deploy each month. Under the Avalanche, you attack credit card A first, highest rate, at 21%. While paying minimums on everything else, you throw that extra $190 at card A every month. Card A is gone in about 22 months. You then roll the full $290 you were paying on card A onto credit. Card B. Card B is gone in about 10 more months. You roll everything onto the car loan. Gone in about 14 more months. Then the student loan. Total time to debt freedom, approximately 57 months, just under 5 years. Total interest paid across all 4 debts, approximately $8,200. Now let's run the exact same numbers under Method 2. Method 2, the debt snowball. The snowball was popularized by Dave Ramsey, and it works like this. You list every debt you have. You order them from lowest balance to highest balance, completely ignoring the interest rates. You pay the minimum on everything except the smallest balance. Every extra dollar goes to the smallest debt until it is gone. Then you roll everything onto the next smallest, and so on. The logic here is not mathematical, it is psychological. Paying off a debt completely, even a small one, produces a genuine sense of progress and momentum. The brain releases a small reward signal when a balance hits 0. That reward signal makes it easier to stay on the plan, which matters more than most financial people want to admit. Under the snowball, with the same 4 debts and the same $800 per month, you attack credit card B first, lowest balance at $2,500. Card B is gone in about 11 months. You roll onto credit card A, gone in about 20 more months. Then the car loan, then the student loan. Total time to debt freedom, approximately 59 months. Total interest paid, approximately $9,800. The difference between Avalanche and Snowball on this specific debt load is $1,600 in interest and about 2 months of time. Now here is the part that the 20-year argument misses entirely. For most people, $1,600 over 5 years is not the deciding factor in their financial life. What is the deciding factor is whether they actually stay on the plan for 5 years. And this is where the behavioral data becomes more important than the interest rate math. A 2016 study published in the Journal of Marketing Research tracked actual debt repayment behavior across thousands of households. The finding was unambiguous. People who focused on paying off individual accounts, regardless of interest rate, paid down significantly more debt than people who focused on reducing total interest cost. The psychological momentum of getting to 0 on a single account was a more powerful behavioral driver than the mathematical efficiency of the avalanche. Translation: the best debt payoff method is the one you will actually follow for 5 years. For people who are highly analytical and self-motivated by numbers, the avalanche. For people who need visible wins to stay engaged, the snowball. Neither one works if you quit in month 14. But here is the third method I mentioned, the one that almost nobody talks about. And this is the one that for a specific type of debt situation, which I am going to describe precisely, mathematically, beats both. Method 3, the hybrid sequence. The hybrid acknowledges something that neither the avalanche nor the snowball fully accounts for. Some debts are not just expensive, they are structurally dangerous. And structurally dangerous debts should jump the queue entirely regardless of their interest rate or their balance size. Here is what I mean. Not all debt is created equal. There is a fundamental difference between secured and unsecured debt that most debt payoff frameworks gloss over. Unsecured debt, credit cards, medical bills, personal loans. If you stop paying it, the consequences are bad. Collections, credit damage, potential lawsuits. Serious but recoverable. Secured debt, your car loan, your mortgage. If you stop paying it, the collateral disappears. The car gets repossessed. The house gets foreclosed. The consequence is not just financial damage. It is the loss of the physical asset your life is built around, the come of. So rule 1 of the hybrid. Any secured debt where you are underwater, where you owe more than the asset is worth, moves to the front of the queue, not because the interest rate is highest, because the structural risk is highest. An underwater car loan at 7% is more dangerous than a credit card at 21% because the credit card cannot take your transportation away. Rule 2 of the hybrid. Any debt with a variable interest rate that is likely to increase moves ahead of fixed-rate debt of similar size. A variable rate HELOC sitting at 9% today that could be 14% in 18 months is a different animal than a fixed 9% personal loan. The math on variable debt changes. The Avalanche assumes the numbers are static. They are not always static. Rule 3 of the hybrid. After structurally dangerous debts are addressed, revert to pure Avalanche logic. Highest interest rate. First, always. The hybrid is not for everyone. If your debt load is all unsecured and all fixed rate, which for most people means credit cards and student loans, the pure Avalanche is your answer. The hybrid becomes relevant the moment secured debt, underwater assets, or variable rates enter the picture. And for a lot of people carrying a car loan and a mortgage alongside credit card debt, that is exactly the picture. Let me make all 3 of these concrete with 1 person and 4 debts tracked over 5 years. Meet Sandra. Sandra is 38. She works as an operations manager at a logistics company, earns about $72,000 a year, and takes home roughly $4,600 a month after taxes. She has 4 debts. Credit card, $4,800. Balance, 22% interest rate. Personal loan, $3,200 balance, 11% interest rate. Car loan, $9,500 balance, 6.5% interest rate. And the car is currently worth about $7,200, meaning she is $2,300 underwater. Student loan, $14,000 balance, 5.8% interest rate. Total, minimum payments, $520 a month. Sandra can put $700 a month toward debt, $180 extra to deploy. Under pure Avalanche, Sandra attacks the credit card first. Highest, rate at 22%, mathematically correct. Total interest paid over the full payoff period, approximately $6,400. Time to debt freedom, about 56 months. Under pure Snowball, Sandra attacks the personal loan first. Lowest, balance at $3,200. Total interest paid, approximately $7,900. Time to debt freedom, about 58 months. Under the hybrid, Sandra looks at her debt picture and sees the underwater car loan. She is $2,300 underwater on a depreciating asset. Every month she waits, the car continues to depreciate faster, then the loan balance drops. If she loses her job or the car needs a major repair, she is trapped. She cannot sell it to cover the loan. She cannot trade it without going further into negative equity. And she cannot afford to lose transportation. The car loan jumps the queue. Sandra attacks the car loan first with her extra $180, gets it above water, closes the gap between loan balance and car value in about 8 months, then pivots to pure Avalanche. Credit card first, then personal loan, then student loan. Total interest paid under the hybrid, approximately $7,100. Time to debt freedom, about 57 months. On raw interest cost alone, the hybrid costs Sandra $700 more than pure Avalanche. But what she bought with that $700 is the elimination of the structural risk sitting underneath her transportation. She is no longer one unexpected repair or one job loss away from a repossession that would unravel everything else in her financial life. For Sandra, that trade is worth every dollar. The math tells you the cost. Only you can decide if the protection is worth it. Now I want to address the thing that derails most debt payoff plans before they ever get started. Because this is the part that the spreadsheets and the YouTube videos and the personal finance podcasts almost never talk about. The plan is not the problem. The month 14 is the problem. Debt payoff plans fail for one reason almost universally. Not because the math was wrong. Not because the interest rates changed. Because somewhere around month 10 to month 18, something happens. An unexpected expense. a bad month at work, a holiday season that went over budget, a moment of genuine exhaustion from the relentless discipline of the plan, and the plan gets paused just for a month, and then the pause becomes 2 months, and then the extra payments quietly stop, and you are back to minimums, and the whole sequence quietly unravels. The antidote to month 14 is not more discipline. It is a smaller gap between the plan and your actual life. For Spain of 14 none. Sequence first, automate every extra payment on the day the paycheck hits. Not manually, not when you remember, automatically. The moment the decision requires active effort, it becomes vulnerable to a bad week. Second, build a $1,000 cash buffer before you start aggressive debt payoff. Not a full emergency fund, just $1,000. This single buffer absorbs roughly 70% of the unexpected expenses that derails debt payoff plans. A $400 car repair does not have to become a pause in your plan if $1,000 is sitting in a separate account for exactly that purpose. Third, give yourself one planned release valve per quarter. Not a month off the plan. A planned, budgeted, guilt-free, discretionary spend of whatever amount you decide in advance. The plan that has zero flexibility for human behavior will lose to human behavior every time. Here is the one question that determines which method is right for you. Not your income, not your total debt, not your interest rates. Can you stay motivated looking at a spreadsheet showing your total interest cost going down, even if your individual balances feel like they are barely moving for the first year? If yes, Avalanche, the math will reward you. If no, Snowball, the momentum will keep you in the game long enough for the math to reward you anyway. If your debt load includes secured debt where you are underwater, or variable rate debt that could increase significantly, add the hybrid layer first, then revert to whichever of the two fits your psychology. That is the entire framework. Not complicated, not a secret, just a sequence applied consistently to a problem that most people approach without one. Now let me take you back to those two people at the beginning of this video. Same debt, same income, same monthly payment, 5 years apart in outcome and $11,000 apart in total interest paid. The only difference was the order. One of them had a sequence, the other had a feeling. The sequence is not complicated. You list the debts, you identify any structural risks, you order by interest rate, you automate the extra payment, you build the $1,000 buffer, and then you leave it alone and let the math run. The paralysis you feel looking at 4 balances on a screen is not a sign that your situation is too complicated to solve. It is a sign that you have been trying to solve a sequencing problem without a sequence. You have one now. Open the spreadsheet tonight. Write the order down. The second person in that opening story didn't lose $11,000 because they were bad with money. They lost it because nobody showed them this before tonight. If this gave you a framework you can actually use, subscribe. Because next we are getting into the tax trap that quietly activates the moment your income starts to grow, the one that makes sure the raise never quite feels like enough. I will see you in that one.